Hi everyone, it's Jody Robinson. I posted a picture of this quilt. You see this design, and this is done, I digitized this design and I stitched it as an all over on this particular quilt. And I did have a couple of people ask how you can stitch it, and you certainly can stitch it if you don't have a computer. A lot of the designs that I've digitized, I've done that because they're things that I stitch and have stitched for quite some time freehand. Now, you're gonna know. I mean, I'm gonna show you how to draw it, and then we'll actually go over to the machine and I'll show you how to stitch it. The one thing that you have to remember now is that this was done by the computer, so you know everything is identical. Each one of these shapes is the same. Each, the spacing is the same. When you stitch it freehand, it's not going to look as precise, and I'm okay with that. I kind of, for an all over, great. This works great. But for years, I've been stitching this design freehand, and it's going to give it a little more organic look, and there is nothing wrong with that. So what I did was I went ahead and marked out with a pencil, just because we need to mark something. Now you can figure if this were your border, let's say, these would be the edges. And this can be oriented either direction, horizontal or vertical. And then you do need to know where the center is, because we need to know, they're going to be the two arches on each side. Where are they going to meet? And then I did go ahead and use a pencil to mark these little hash marks, and they're approximately 1/2 inch. I like to do this kind of marking by eye. I didn't use a ruler to mark them. And it's really just a place to aim to, so I can kind of know, because we need the inside echo from this side to match up with the echo from this side mostly. So if you need to give yourself those reference points, go ahead. There's nothing wrong with doing a little marking. But I would say that probably after you do, half of a border, you're really going to find that you'll find your automatic echo size, and you're not going to really even need those markings. So I'm going to start up here at the top, and what I'm going to do is just stitch around this. You could easily do this more squared off, but I really like those little round corners. So what I'm going to do is starting here, I'm going to stitch actually exactly what is marked here, rounding those corners though, and then I'm going to come back down on this side. Now I'm going to travel in, and that's where that point helps, and I'm going to do an echo. At this point, I want to do this one next, but I'm up here. So just as a means to travel, I'm going to do this kind of curved half diamond shape. Now this is another thing. If you're not comfortable to just do that freehand, there's no problem. If you want to give yourself kind of a little reference dot, you can just eyeball it right in the middle of that square that you'll have to stitch to and back out. Now I'm going to travel down here, and I'm going to do the same thing on this one. Travel, echo, curve, curve, travel, and again. And to the bottom. Now we're going to work our way up this side, and if you look here, you're going to notice that here, here, and here, there's no stitching. But what's going to happen is, because we're working our way back up in reverse, that one is going to get stitched instead of this one on this next pass. So now we're going to do the same thing. We're going to work our way up. Right here, we close that one in. Travel, echo, curve, curve, right into the next one. Whoop. Travel, Echo that one. Curve, curve. Now, at this point, you know, and in the case of the quilt that I showed you, there is a circle in the center. But, I mean, depending on the density that you want, if you were doing this as an all over, then probably, obviously, you would probably want to do it this way and do rows, but it's stitched exactly the same. You would just work your way across the top and then the bottom. You can leave it just like this, but maybe you do want to add the circle in the centers, and you can do that. You would just at this point come down, circle, all the way through, circle, all the way through, circle, and done. But maybe you also, you know, maybe you want it to be a lot more densely quilted and you want to put a fill or something in here. You can do that as well. I would do it, you know, as I do the circle and get to this point, I would go ahead and do my fill. And I'm just going to scribble to get it done quicker, but you can put any fill in there that you want. And then I would come around, sneak through that top part, and do this side. So I can do all of one shape before I move on to the next one. Down. And you might, I mean, this is just the path that I use to stitch it. You might find one that makes more sense to you. And, you know, obviously, I'm traveling back through here again because I'm showing it as, you know, at the end. But you could certainly do it as you stitch. Let me finish this and I'll show you what I mean by that. So as we stitched this, as we did this, the echo, and this point, you could have easily gone ahead and filled this side. And I would leave myself so I can get back down to here. You could do this now if you want. But for me, I like to work in a really methodical way because I usually will, you know, at some point here and there, I'll forget to like do the fill, and then I have to keep, you know, at the end, I have to go back and do it. So it just makes more sense in my head to do all of this, all of that, and then work my way back through, do this and do that. So, you know, I'm sure you may find a path in your own quilting that makes sense more than my path, and that's fine. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get some fabric loaded on the machine, and I will see you over at the machine, and I'll show you how to actually stitch it. Okay, so now that we're over here at the machine, I'm going to go ahead and show you how I stitch this. And you're going to notice, so I just, you know, you do definitely want to know where the center line is. So what I did was I went ahead and marked out, this is 6 inches by 9 inches. And then I divided it in the center, so I know where the centers are. And I also divided this up into 3 equal parts. The spacing really is going to, it would probably be different on every quilt. It doesn't, you know, the spacing doesn't matter. But if you want to try it at exactly the same spacing, that's what I marked. You can do it really tiny. You could do it much larger. And you'll notice here, I did put one little mark. And you may, you know, maybe the first time you try stitching it, you might want to go ahead and give yourself a mark to just kind of give you direction as to how wide you want these to be. And I'm just going to eyeball these in here like at, I don't know, maybe about 1/2 inch. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start up here at the very top. Let me... Okay, so now I'm just going to work my way around. I'm going to go from this, the top of this left side. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to actually trace what's here, but I want to round the edges off. You could, I mean, if you wanted to do yours squared off, you could do that too. I really like the little rounded corners though. So I'm just going to see what I mean by I'm stitching what's actually there. going to travel up to that mark, and I'm just going to echo it. Are they going to be perfect echoes the whole way around? Probably not. Kind of aiming for those marks that I put in. And so this is the difference between, this one obviously is going to look very different from the computer stitch design because we are not a computer. And honestly, with something like this, because the rounded corners and it's kind of, to me, a little more organic looking, I like it that they're not exactly the same. So, I mean, if you're someone that needs it to be perfectly equal and even, then you might want to mark the whole thing in, but that kind of defeats the purpose because that kind of would be a lot of work, but it's not a huge deal. You might want to mark it in all of it the first time or two, but that's entirely up to you. And if you remember, so we stitched this part, stitch the echo, and now we need to get from here to here. So I'm going to stitch that little kind of point, curved point. Again, if you're not comfortable to just do it and you really feel like you need them to all be in the same place, you could give yourself a little dot to go to. I mean, and I would just eyeball for the kind of the center of that square. There's nothing wrong with that. It gives you a little more security when you go to stitch it. So now I'm going to do that curved point just to get myself over to here where I need to be. Curve up and down. At this point, now I can just travel right over top of what I already stitched and do this next one. Curved point. Get myself back here, down to this next one. And you see I'm not exactly on the line. That's okay, because once the line is gone, nobody is going to know that I wasn't on that line. And I'll use my little point to do the curve. Okay, now I'm going to travel down here, and I'm just going to do the same thing in reverse. So now I'm going to work up this side and do the same thing. And I don't know if you can see it on here or not, but every other one of these little things is not stitched. But that's okay, because the same thing is going to happen when we go up and do this side, and it will stitch those this time. So now I'm going to do the same thing. Just actually stitch that. See right there, I'm able to close that in now. The echo. Little curve. Travel through there. Echo. Travel. And this last one. Echo. Curve. And done. And when just like when I drew it, you can leave it at that. And depending on the spacing, this is open, but if you wanted to do this, like I did on the quilt that I showed you, where I used the computer, I also oriented the other direction, which you can do just the same, but you may want it to be this open. Maybe you were doing this in a border. You might want to come in and do some fill in here. Another option, I told you, you could travel back down through the centers of all of these. You might want to put a little circle in there. Or maybe you do want to fill this. And I would do it at this point. So I'll fill one of these. I'm just doing a little meander in there. And I would work my way to fill in this side. And then I'm going to sneak over to this side and kind of leave room because I want to go back out the bottom. So now I'll go ahead and work my way up here and get this whole section filled. And I can go out. So let me get rid of this thread. You can see what it looks like as a whole. And there it is. So, you know, if you want it to be filled and have these stand up a little bit, or maybe you want it a little more open and you don't want to put any fill at all. So you don't have to be, you know, not everyone has a computer. So a lot of times when you see designs, you know, that you see someone stitch out with a computer, there's no reason why you can't kind of, you know, just look at it and see. More than likely, you can also stitch it freehand. So that's always something to keep in mind. I hope you enjoyed seeing how that stitches out. Have a great day.